There's another vaccine even better than last week's. What the heck is going on in Ethiopia, Asia's new trade pact, and why I need a dog? All on this week's episode of Headlines. On last week's episode of Headlines, make sure you check that out, we talked about vaccine development by Pfizer and BioNTech. Well, US company Moderna says its vaccine is 94.5% effective. The US's top infectious disease scientist, Anthony Fauci, hailed it as stunningly impressive. The victory is a win for US President Donald Trump's Operation Warp Speed project to fast-track a vaccine. Both China and Russia say that they have effective vaccines as well. And countries have already begun acting. Last week, the European Commission agreed to buy up to 300 million doses of the vaccine. But the US has first dibs on Moderna, already getting $1.5 billion for the first 100 million doses. As the virus rages, and it's still raging with more than 55 million global infections, the Olympics will, so far, go ahead as planned. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach and Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga talked this week, with Bach encouraging athletes to get vaccinated. Uruguay's top goal scorer, Luis Suarez, has tested positive for coronavirus and will miss their World Cup qualifier against Brazil. It also means that Suarez will miss Atletico Madrid's La Liga match against Barcelona. Now moving on to Ethiopia, a country that rarely makes global news. So rare that I had to look up what Ethiopia is known for. Well, other than the fact that it's in East Africa and is known as the cradle of mankind, since that's where the oldest skeletal evidence for modern humans have been found. But in the last couple of weeks, Ethiopia has been in the headlines every single day because of a war that the government has declared on one of its states, Tigray. The crisis has been building for months since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took office in 2018. This was when Ethiopia went from being a country that was largely controlled by powerful regional governments to one that became more democratic, and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed also pocketed the Nobel Peace Prize as a result of enabling this peaceful transition to democracy, because a peaceful transfer of power is not usual in Africa. However, this left the regional powers frustrated, including the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a ruling coalition of 4 regional parties which has a powerful military. They were hoping that regional elections would give them the much-needed clout once they got back into office. Unfortunately, COVID-19 upset these plans and the federal government postponed the elections. In September, the Tigray region held its elections anyway, and these were won by the TPLF. This didn't sit very well with the federal government, who cut off funding to the region as a punishment. But the Tigrayans ruled Ethiopia for 3 decades before the transition to democracy. Now they're at war with the national government. This could break Ethiopia apart while also impacting peace and stability across East Africa. It sent thousands of civilians fleeing across borders into Eritrea and Sudan. Ahmed seems to have a pretty tough job on his hands. Tigray is just one unhappy region, and he has 9 more clamoring for greater autonomy. He chose to escalate this in the most brutal way possible. Over the last 2 weeks, government planes have bombed Tigray to neutralize the TPLF, and of course, civilians were among the casualties. The TPLF, on its part, has been accused of massacring villagers in retaliation, and now both sides are accusing each other of war crimes. Things look grim. Asian leaders are about to sign the world's largest free trade deal. Known as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, it covers nearly a third of the world's people and accounts for 29% of GDP. Who's in? The 10 member nations of ASEAN, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Who's out? India, apparently because it wanted to shield its local producers. Also out is the US, again. Overall, it will help China to tighten trade links with Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, where things have been a little rocky lately. What's the big deal? Well, this is kind of like Asia's first steps on the road to becoming a strong economic union that could be very similar to the EU. Instead of a mishmash of agreements between individual countries, it sets out the same ground rules for everyone. Over in the tech world, we saw 2 big drops this week. One big release was the PlayStation 5. Most of you will already know about the PS5 because of all the memes. It's the most powerful gaming console yet, and despite its minimalistic looks, it's still getting pretty good reviews. The consoles dropped in stores in the US on the 12th of November and were quickly sold out. The other big update was from Apple, who unveiled a brand new operating system for their Mac computer lineup, macOS Big Sur. When Apple made their first announcement of Big Sur in June this year, many people weren't too happy about it. I guess you could say that the acronym for Big Sur was an apt way to describe people's thoughts on the operating system. Frankly, most users thought it was BS. But last week, Apple dropped the update and users were quick to install it. Tech reviewers immediately hopped onto YouTube to call it a welcome addition to Apple's ecosystem after what many consider to be the ultimate flop, that's the iPhone 12. I've installed the update myself, but I'm not really happy. Pages has this new autosave feature like Google Docs, so there goes my I accidentally deleted my document excuse for homework assignments. Does anyone have a dog I can borrow? If you've enjoyed this week's headlines, hit that like button, and if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe.